country in a world. What's his name? Shh, secrets. He's got tricks up his sleeve. Most bad guys won't believe. A bulletproof coat, a cannon hat, machine gun came with a fight for his life. His disguise takes him many places. He's a squirrel of many faces. Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Secret squirrel.
You know, I've loved that music ever since I was a little children. And it sounds even better now. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You've just tuned in to the Cerebus Radio Network. This is Gregory Carpenter, the spy who loves liberty. In my coat pocket today, we have Daniel and our producer, Jeff, who's off doing produceristic type things. It's a little chilly this morning here on the last day of January in 2019. You ever think it would be this? I mean, you get into 2019, you blink, and all of a sudden, the whole first month is gone. Now, I'm not saying I'm happy or anything, but the average temperature here in the People's Democratic Republic of Northern Virginia has, let's just say it's been about, well, we got numbers still, and that's a good thing, because where Jeff and Daniel are, they're using symbols now to represent the level of heat that they have in their houses, which is not a good thing. So our hearts go out to them and everybody in the Great White midsection of the country. That's a play on the Great White North, folks. It doesn't mean that everybody's white up there, okay? So don't start reading into what I didn't say, and listen to what I did say. Thank you. We're hoping that this cold spell breaks soon, because here in the People's Democratic Republic, it's, let's just say we're piled up with ice, and there's been lots of accidents. We had school closed the other day, and within the first 90 minutes of closing school, there were 30 accidents with 2 fatalities. So I can't reiterate the fact enough that people have no idea how to drive anymore, and they don't take the precautions they need to. It comes with self-responsibility, things that we should be doing on our own without the government's help. I don't need the government to look over my shoulder to tell me that I should drive like an adult. I should look to government to maybe regulate interstate traffic, but that's about it. And my state government in Virginia, or my country government in Virginia, that's right, the Commonwealth of Virginia is a separate country. Don't again, listen to what we're saying here and what it means. Each state is an individual country. You have to go back to reading the Articles of Confederation and recognizing how the Northwest Ordinance affected each state or each country as it was brought into the Union. Remember that war we had, that Civil War thing, right? We had the Union and the Confederacy. Well, the Union, does that not ring a bell with, this is a bunch of independent countries that have gotten together? The European Union, the Italian Confederacy. These things happened all around the same time in history. Germany consolidated, Italy consolidated, and unfortunately, these independent United States were forced into consolidation through a war, a terrible war, where many hundreds of thousands of people sacrificed their lives at the whim of one man. But we're not here to dwell on the past and look at those types of things today. Today we're going to look into some secret squirrel type stuff. As you heard in the great music there, the story of Secret Squirrel is, I would say, one of the best and one of the most unknown stories in American culture, and we'd like to keep it that way. I am drinking my coffee from my Secret Squirrel mug this morning, and the writing on it says does not contain Kool-Aid, because we want everyone here at the Cerebus Radio Network to understand the truth and listen to the truth and hear the truth. So, having said that, today, a reading from the Body of Secrets. It's not a religious reading, but it's kind of sort of a reading from the Body of Secrets, the section of soul. So let me explain them in here. The Body of Secrets is a book by James Bamford. Now he's the guy. You may have heard the name before because he's the author of The Puzzle Palace, the story of NSA. This book is the anatomy of NSA, how it works, how it operates, all the inner workings of NSA. And it goes from the Cold War into the early 21st century. So this is a reading from the Book of Secrets. And we're going to talk today about the NSA process of clearing people and how they actually allow them into the Puzzle Palace itself. Some of the readings from here are a little disturbing. If you've ever worked at the National Security Agency like I have, you would sit here and read through this thing and you just relive some of the horrors of putting up with these people. Here, quote from the book. It says, "The idea of suddenly being called from an office, strapped to a machine, and asked whether you've been selling secrets to the Russians or leaking information to the press might leave, quote, the workforce at NSA shocked," unquote, said Philip Peace, the chief of the Office of Security at NSA. As a result, employees were called to the Friedman Auditorium. You don't know who Friedman was. Friedman was like pretty much the founder of NSA. As a result, employees were called to the Friedman Auditorium for a series of town meetings during which new procedures of security are discussed. Under a periodic exam program, the agency, without notice, pulled 1,770 people into the polygraph rooms in 1983. Of those, 1,699 were thanked and sent on their way. 71, however, were asked to come back for further interviews, which cleared all but 4. They returned for a third round of drilling, but were eventually also allowed to return to work. Presumably a few pounds lighter. According to the chief of the Polygraph Division, Norman Ansley, the problems ranged across the board. One individual had kept classified manuals at his residence for several years. Another person knew of the improper destruction of crypto keying material. Still another described a suspicious approach by a foreign person, but had failed to report the incident at the time it took place. So you see, at any time when you're at the Puzzle Palace, you can be called in, drug in, the middle of your work, doesn't matter what you're doing. They'll come and get you. And they'll bring security to make sure you come along because you have been chosen at random. And as you can see, 1,699 people out of 1,770 walked away. But it's not just a walk away. When you go and do one of these polygraphs, and I've had a few, I have to admit, it is one of the most unpleasant and demeaning experiences of your life. You may not have done anything wrong, but you feel like the biggest criminal in the world. You're accused of everything. You have no recourse. During one, I got so mad. I was like, dude, you leave me alone. What are you looking? There's nothing. I've told you like 6 dozen times. There's nothing there. What? Don't you have a life? Don't you have like work to do? And that just identified me as a problem because I was frustrated with their over inquisitiveness at something that wasn't there. So, but we got past that, of course. It's just an amazing thing. So the office I was in, we had programs that we worked on for the Air Force and the Navy and the Army and the NSA and the CIA and the the FYI and the CYA and everybody else in the NRO, and you just name it, we had programs there. So the intelligence community has a very interesting posture. They used to not accept, one organization wouldn't accept another organization's security review. So if you had an investigation done, you were granted a security clearance, another organization wouldn't take that. Not necessarily. They could if they wanted to, if it was for equal access. But they're not required to. Now they're required to, because there is a reciprocity order that's put in place in the intelligence community. But see, that didn't filter down to the agencies themselves, because in the office I worked in, because of all the other interests that were there, you would have to take polygraph tests randomly for whatever office. So you could go in one day and be called off to go do a polygraph for the Army and not be there when they're looking for you at your appointed place of duty when the Air Force comes to grab you for a polygraph test, because they didn't coordinate. And now you're in trouble because you're not where you're supposed to be in the building, right? This can get tricky. So we had to have polygraph deconfliction in the office we were in, because we were polygraphed so often. Now you would think at this point, and when I say polygraph so often, I mean I had one guy go out 3 times in 1 week. I got no work out of him that week, because it takes 4 to 6 hours to do a polygraph. You go in there, you have to write down all this stuff. I mean, all kinds of information. Then they go through, they put you through the machine, blah, blah. If they don't like it, of course, they let you sit there like you did something wrong. We've got to go. It's the old, if you've ever gone to purchase a car, right? You're sitting there like, I got to go talk to my boss. Oh, okay. And, and the coolest part about this is that, statistically speaking, the polygraph is only 51% accurate. So it's 1% better than flipping a coin. Now, if that tells you how accurate anything is, I don't know. But that's exactly how it is. So let me continue on here. After the test, the examiner reviews the individual's chart and makes a final decision on the results. NSR, no significant response, means that there's no unresolved issues. SPR, specific physiological response, signifies that the individual reacted consistently to a specific question. See, if you don't react, then you're okay, I guess. INC, inconclusive, means that the test results could not be interpreted, and incomplete signifies that the test was not finished. When issues are unresolved, the individual is requested to return to the box for retesting. Now, isn't that exciting? So you could sit there for 2 or 3 or 4 days going through these things and have an SPR. Just because you have a response to something doesn't mean that something's wrong, right? So the number one group of people, this is the best part. The number one group of people that pass the polygraph consistently are sociopaths, because they don't have physiological responses to anything. They just sit there like a bump on a log. So here's the inside scoop. Your intelligence community is full, it's overrepresented, statistically speaking, it's overrepresented by sociopaths, because they're the people that pass the polygraph better, more often, at a higher rate than any other group out there. And with that, I had to take a drink of coffee, because I just love that. So your polygraph procedure, 51% accurate, a little bit better than flipping a coin. So what's the benefit of something like this? Well, what happens is they abuse people so much. And if you're just joining us, you got Greg Carpenter here, the Spy Who Loves Liberty. We've got Daniel, we got Jeff, and now we have Suzanne from the Rockies joining us here this morning. And we're talking about the book, The Body of Secrets by James Bamford, of course, the guy who wrote The Puzzle Palace. And we're looking at the section here on the polygraph procedures that he's talked about, which is most interesting, I have to admit. Here it is here. This is the section I was looking for. This is the reason why they do polygraphs. A unique insight into the NSA polygraph program comes from an analysis of 20,511 applicants. Of those, 695, or 3.4%, admitted to the commission of a felony. In nearly all cases, the perpetrator had gone undetected. The admissions included murder, armed robbery, forcible rape, burglary, arson, embezzlement, hit-and-run driving with personal injury, thefts of expensive items or large amounts of money, smuggling, and wholesale selling of illegal drugs. One person who applied to NSA proved to be a fugitive who, during questioning under the polygraph, admitted firing a rifle into his estranged wife's home in an attempt to murder her. Another confessed to firing his shotgun at 6 people and hitting all of them. He had been charged with attempted murder, but not tried because of lack of evidence. Still another told of setting fire to the trailer in which his ex-wife and their child lived. And a veteran admitted on a polygraph to a polygraph operator that while in Vietnam, he had murdered a young girl. On a later occasion, he stabbed a stranger in the face with a knife in an argument over some beer. And an applicant for an engineering position who was employed as an engineer by another government agency blurted out that he had shot and wounded his second wife and that his present wife was missing under unusual circumstances, which he could not explain. He also suddenly declared that his engineering degree was a phony. So there you go. That's why they use the polygraph, because they use the abrasive tactics to get people to admit things. And I think that's all over the news as it is. Not just reading from the book here, but it's been cited many, many times, the scientific veracity of the polygraph machine. And there you go. There's your NSA update for the day. I want to take a second here just to welcome Suzanne. Suzanne, how are you this morning?
Sorry, my mic was muted. I'm doing well. Sorry to join you a little bit late. We had an amazing event here at about 3 o'clock in the morning. The Friskies Grand Prix went green at about 3:02, and all 3 felines participated, and a good time was had by all except for me.
That's awesome. I hope you had the Purina premium seats.
Yeah, I did, under my covers with the pillow over my head.
Right. Right, you got to stay out of the way of that. So good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And how is it? Is it nice and toasty and roasty up there? Are you still measuring the temperature with numbers, or did you do like Prince and you're just using symbols now?
You know, I believe we are about in the 20s, a nice balmy little 20-something degree. I got my weather app on my phone. I'll check that in a few moments. But yeah, it's not bad. We have some snow in the forecast for next week. Kind of a sad day for me today. It's the last day of the antlerless elk hunt. I'm hoping to go get one maybe this afternoon. I got mine the first time I went out, but I had so much fun. I bought another tag, but I don't know if my outfitter friend is able to take me because he's been booked solid. So if I don't get another one today, I will process the one I got and start on my elk stock and be very industrious for the rest of the week. Yes.
Dual tagging it. I love it. That's great.
Yeah. So but I want to hear more about this lie detector stuff, because, you know, when I practiced law, it was understood that lie detectors are considered unreliable and not evidence that would be allowed in a court of law.
That's right. Yeah. So it's interestingly enough, it's the level of coerciveness of the polygraph examiner and their ability to read people. The polygraph itself has pretty much no value to it. All it does is it identifies if and when you have some type of physiological response to a stimuli. So the stimuli could be that I don't know, you could bang your head on the table, I guess, right? That would cause a physiological response that they could read. So I guess because of something like that, they have you sit completely still in the chair, and they have a motion pad so they can measure your feet. Take your shoes off, of course. You sit on the motion pad so they could measure your buttocks. You got straps around your arms, your chest, your head. It makes you feel like they want you to feel like you are totally wired and they can totally read everything that you can do or say, and all they can do is measure a response. If you have um let's say you have like one of those twitches, your fingers twitching or something, you have to stop the test because you have a twitch in between, and that throws the measurement of the test off. That would be my guess. So you can't have any external stimuli that brings them away from a good baseline. So
I,
they
I
have you
think
tell the truth, they have you lie.
I think being in that situation alone would be enough to have somebody's stress levels elevated to the point it would be difficult to get an accurate reading anyway. Plus, there'd be somebody like me. One of the reasons I don't like using my video camera when we do these shows. Well, first of all, it's too early in the morning for me. But the other thing is I'm always moving around. I'm always moving my foot. I'm always bouncing,
Sure.
shifting in my chair. And then if I was forced to not move at all, I think that would cause me to be even more anxious and not pass the test. I don't know. I've never taken one. It would be
You
interesting.
can pass it. See, that's the thing. You don't really pass or fail a polygraph. You're just there for it. And as it measures your physiology, it comes up with some certain level of consistency. And from that level of consistency, basically they say, okay, well, this is consistent enough. Wherever your baseline is, however nervous you are, they go to that level and they create a baseline there. So if you're very nervous and you're twitching around all the time at everything, you'll probably make them very frustrated, which is I find very funny, because I think that most of the people that administer these, and I can't even call it a test, let's call it a procedure. The people that administer this type of a procedure, their personality, they're really not nice people, I think, for the most part. Some of them are, but for the most part, I'm not convinced that they're even nice people. They just like to make people uncomfortable. It's funny. I had one of my friends one time had he had gone to do his polygraph, his follow up, and they asked him about well, have you ever had any drugs in your possession? They said, well, yes, I have. They said, oh, really? Well, why don't you tell us about that? And he said, okay. And he said, yeah, I was packed up. I had this. I went downtown, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, yeah? Yeah, how much did you have? He said, oh, I had about like 2 pounds of cocaine. Really? Yeah. I was telling them all the details and everything. And they said, well, specifically, why were you doing that? He said, well, because I was set up I was a target for the counter drug exploitation team. So I went to the I went to the resource office, picked up 2 pounds of cocaine, put it off. I was supposed to make I was supposed to meet a guy who was making a buy, and we were going to arrest him. And the guy doing the polygraph looked at him like, you're an a-hole. My buddy looked back at him. He goes, did you really think I'd let it be that easy? Needless to say, he had to sit for an extra 6 hours because the person administering the polygraph procedure was upset with him because he had a sense of humor. You see, these people don't have a sense of humor. It's not issued by the government. They don't have it. That's just the way it is. They're that rigid, and they're that. Let me use that sound effect. Now the people at other agencies are not that way. It's just the NSA polygraphers that are that way. They're just
I thought that was
really
Daniel in the
nasty.
background.
No. Daniel, how are you today, sir? Jump over to Daniel here. How you doing?
I was just thinking of how that sounded so much like a DOT roadside inspection.
Wow.
Why don't you tell me all about your load and tell me what I should write you up for.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like that, doesn't it? It's the same procedure, just different location. That's funny. Oh my gosh. How are you today, Daniel? What temperature do you have there?
I'm at a whopping 8.2.
8.2. Look at that. Holy cow. So, yeah, everybody has cold weather except Suzanne. Suzanne, you're living it up there in the Rockies, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, if we get to the 30s, the funny thing is I remember people who lived in places like Michigan, Minnesota. I had a friend there that said one time in the 40s is actually t-shirt weather, and I thought being in California that was absolutely insane. When it was in the 60s, I would be dressed like I was participating in the Iditarod, and now the 60s is, middle of summer for us. It does get hot here, but the point being, yes, t-shirt weather is actually in the 40s. I get it now. It's amazing, really, how quickly we can adapt to different situations. I didn't think I would do as well as I'm doing in this cold weather.
I got to tell you,
I hunker down in this cabin when it is cold.
It's kind of amazing. I did a tour of duty up in Minnesota and Wisconsin for the Army. I was assigned to the recruiting command, and during the winter up there, it got down to about 30 below. And I thought, and so my body is not structured to be able to. The sensors in my body don't work after 20 below, I've noticed. It was just all unacceptable. Let me just use that word. So I can't even imagine what's happening now with certain places that have temperatures of 65 and 72 below. I can't even imagine what that is. My body won't pick that up. I just know it's just too cold. And when you start to get to 2 digits on the Kelvin scale, it's stinking cold. Your body is just going to stop moving. Forget it. And it actually has been that cold a couple times in Antarctica over the history of the world. So, and most recently, there's been a few record-setting cold temperatures in Antarctica, by the way. Just a memo to Al Gore. You're still wrong, and I hope you're making lots of money off of it, because nobody should ever believe what you say. So back to the super awesome, crazy stuff of the NSA here. I want to go over to another story that was really interesting to me, and it was published by Reuters, and the title says UAE. United Arab Emirates used cyber super weapon to spy on iPhone of foes. Now, this might, it goes right back to the regular, the concept that the government's always spying on you and this and that. Well, this is one of those tightly held things. Getting into iPhones, let's just say, is easy, and it's always been easy. Here, they actually talk about how they got into the iPhone in this article. And I want to read this one quote from here first, just to get started off, to give you the concept of the mindset of your standard NSA employee. Okay. Now, there's a group here called, what are they called? Project Raven. And they're a bunch of former NSA people that were working for the UAE on this project. All right. Here we go. Lori Stroud. They even give her name. They have a picture of her and everything. which is highly unusual. A former Raven operative who also previously worked at the U.S. National Security Agency told Reuters of the excitement when this software, Karma, was introduced in 2016. Quote, it was like, quote, we have this great new exploit that we just bought. Get us a huge list of targets that have iPhones now, she said. Quote, it was like Christmas, unquote. Let that sink in for a second. Get me all the targets I can get. Get me everything on everybody that I've ever wanted. It's Christmas time at NSA. We could all of a sudden get into the iPhones again. Oh, again. Yes, again. Every once in a while, Apple publishes a patch, and you can't get in for a while. But don't worry about it. Back to the article. Karma and similar tools, of which I am aware, and you are not, but you'll be aware soon, made personal devices like iPhones, quote, the juiciest of targets, unquote, said Patrick Wardle, a former National Security Agency researcher and Apple security expert. Why does the NSA have an Apple security expert? A spokeswoman for UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs declined to comment. Apple declined to comment. Go figure. So how did this work? I'm going to tell you how this worked because you're going to like this. You put a telephone number into this Raven system, and it sends a message in through the iMessage system. Now, you don't have to have the iMessage system turned on. You don't have to have it activated. You don't have to be using it. You don't have to have Facebook, or you don't have to have anything else. Just the fact that you had the iMessage in your Apple phone allowed them to send a message there. Then there was a flaw in the iMessage system that allowed them to embed malware, which was called a RAT, a remote access tool. This RAT was the thing that collected the information from the iPhone and sent it back out to the Project Raven folks. So think about that. You don't have to do anything except have your phone. And your phone just has to be turned on. And without your knowledge, without any action on your part, complete access to your iPhone was gained, and everything was taken. How warm and fuzzy do you feel now? And do you realize that if you had the iMessage system on an Android device, it would also work? It didn't work straight up on an Android device because the flaw was in the iMessage system itself. But if you downloaded from the App Store the iMessage system and put it onto an Android device, it would also work. And the same thing would happen with a Windows phone or a BlackBerry. You could make your system the most insecure system in the world just by downloading that one app. Now, how do you feel? Not so good anymore, do you? So here's the interesting part. This is just one tool and one hack that you're told about. Think of it like a winter snowstorm. You're seeing one side of one snowflake in a massive winter storm. That's your visibility from this article, just to put things into perspective. Or in another way, if you look to the skies at night and you don't have all this light pollution around you. If you see Jupiter, that's nice. If you see Mars, that's nice. Or Venus, just the planets you can see. But no, this is like seeing one planet in the Milky Way galaxy of activity that's going on right now. By the way, the NSA declined to comment on the tool or Project Raven. Just by the way, just thought I'd throw that in there. So you really have to think deep about this. You have visibility of a tool. I could name off another dozen tools right now. Cain and Abel, Burp Suite, all these things that allow you to gain access to somebody else's computer or somebody else's device. And it takes no time at all. It doesn't require any action on the part of the user. I could take John the Ripper and be in your network before you knew it. The what? Yeah. It's another one. All you need to do, folks, I'm telling you, if you have Linux, if you're running Linux, and don't be afraid because the word Linux instead of Windows is used. I'm telling you, if you want to look at different tools that can be used for network security, network health, and personal home computer hygiene, download a free copy of Kali Linux, Kali. All the tools that are in there are tools that allow you to hack other people, or on the other hand, check and make sure that your home networks are just as safe as somebody else using tools to try to hack you. You have to think of it from both sides because there's two sides to every technology. Technology in almost every single instance now is called dual use. There's two sides to it. There's not just one side anymore. I made a car to go do this. No, I made a software program to do this. Well, it does this and it does exactly the opposite. If I have something that can go in and identify flaws in your network, then that same system can be used to exploit the flaws in your network. And don't think that there's a lot of nice people out there looking out for your own personal health and welfare that are going to use these tools to help you feel better, help you be better, help you take care of your computers. It's not going to happen. If you get hacked at home, is Verizon or AT&T or Coxnet or whoever your internet service provider, are they going to take responsibility for what happened because they have the router that let the people get in? You know, they own that router. They set up the security on that router that let the people get into your house and take over your Wi-Fi. Are they going to take responsibility for that action? No. In a forensic matter, are they going to go back and look at what happened and figure out who it was? No, they don't care about you. Think about it in this manner. You have to be the person to take care of your own computer networks. You have to be the person to look out for your own computer networks. The health and hygiene of your home network is your responsibility. It's not somebody else's responsibility. So please get yourself a copy of Kali Linux. Go get yourself a cheap laptop, maybe $200. The cheapest thing in the world. It doesn't matter what it is. But get yourself one of those. Learn how to use the tools. You can put the Kali Linux on a thumb drive, and you can have your computer boot up from that thumb drive so you don't have to use that stupid Windows stuff. I don't use Windows, and I hope to God most of you folks out there stop using Windows. If you want to use a good operating system, use Ubuntu. Linux has numerous types of operating systems for different things. Ubuntu is your networking operating system. It's the one that does the same thing that Windows does. It takes up a lot less memory. It has a lot less exploits against it. But you can load just as much security on it as you like. You can do almost as everything you want to do with Ubuntu as you can with Windows. And on the other hand, in some cases, you can do more of other stuff that you can't do with Windows. And the best part of Ubuntu is that you're not reporting everything back to Microsoft. That's right. Kali is an open source product. Linux is an open source project. Everybody supports, they throw in a little bit, and you can take the operating system yourself and tweak it a bit. There's plenty of YouTube videos on how to tweak the operating system just a little bit so your operating system is more unique than the next person's. And it's a little bit different. That means that the standard exploits that come out of the box that hackers use won't work against your operating system. Did you ever have a security person tell you that? No, you didn't. And you know why you didn't? Because that cuts down on their pesos. They'll go in there, they'll go fix your stuff, they'll put your stuff together. But I'll tell you what, you're going to be paying them, and they're going to collect that check, and they're going to smile, and they're going to go off to the bank, and you're going to have the same problem. The same problem. Because most of the time, when a hacker gains access to what you have, there's a reason why they're picking you. You're either the easiest target, you have the most information, you have access to money or other information that's unique in such a way. There's a reason why they're going after you and looking at you. So don't think for a second that they're going to just give up their access. There's really no reason for them to give up access. And another good reason is they take over your computer and use the processor in there. They'll run it all day, all night at a certain level. And your computer will become what's called a drone or a zombie. And it will process for them. And what will it process? It will process things like Bitcoin. They'll be mining Bitcoin on your computer using your processor, your electricity, and everything. And they're going to get all the benefit. And of course, that goes without saying that that's any currency like that. Excuse me, I just had a big yawn. My goodness, I didn't realize I was quite that boring. So that's what happens when you get old, folks. You know, young folks out there on the radio land, let me tell you, when you get old, you're going to start feeling it. I mean, look at our producer, Jeff. This guy's like, 130 or something? And he's up every day. I give him that much. He's up every day. But man, does he make, his body makes all these noises when he moves. And you kids will get there one day. I mean, I'll get there too. I mean, I'm not quite 130 yet like Jeff, but I'm working on it. I hope to make it there one day.
Yes, you young whippersnapper.
You whippersnapper. Yeah, you whippersnapper. Yeah. But back to computer exploitation stuff. So you want to be the person yourself to take care of your own computer. Don't slough it off on somebody else, and don't spend a lot of money on antivirus programs and things like that. It really doesn't do any good to have a super awesome antivirus program, because for the most part, any hacker with any moxie whatsoever will just go around your antivirus program. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been in conferences and hacking conventions, and people are talking about, okay, well, this is the newest way to go around Symantec. This is what we're doing now. This is the standard community procedure to get around McAfee. Yeah, it's just a few steps, and you go right around the antivirus protection, and you're into the network. It's, again, not really that hard. Your antivirus is there pretty much to protect you against your everyday malware that gets thrown out by the gajillions, I'll say, trillions or whatever, the things that are hitting your computer all the time, day and night. Your anti-spyware should be another program you are running. But again, it's not 100%. It's just another piece of the puzzle that you have to have. Not any one piece is going to give you the computer security you need to protect you against something like a Raven. It's just it's the, this Project Raven guys with the tools they have. It's not going to happen. If a nation state wants access to your computer, they're going to take it and they're going to get it. I like to joke around that where's my phone? Here's my phone here. On my phone, I can tell you every time that I have a foreign government intelligence service access my phone. And here it is here. Let me go back and look at my history. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's from September 1st. I have tracked 8 accesses onto my cell phone. Now you're gonna say, "Well, Greg, how do you know that?" Well, let me tell you, it's not easy, but there are ways of doing it. I think that you're going to notice if you here. Let's give you a cheating answer here. If you go into if you have an iPhone, bring up your or Android, bring up your Facebook Messenger. This is the most common way. And go back through the history and look through that and see how many times you have extended you have become your own friend. Let me put it that way. Your profile will friend you. Now figure that one out. How did your profile says here, I'm now connected with Gregory Carpenter on Messenger. And who was that? Oh, that was the Russians. So don't be shy. Just jump in there and take a look at it. And sometimes they'll leave this information on your phone. Here, you're now connected on Messenger with Gregory Carpenter. Gregory Carpenter, you're connected with Gregory Carpenter on Messenger. There's another one. So it's one way to identify that you have people trying to access your account. And this very well could have been by this happening here, that I didn't even see these messages come in. It could have been this karma tool, that this is the forensics, the data that's left over from using the tool itself. It just leaves you a thing in the messenger, like for the iMessage. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But that's not the only way that the karma tool worked, and that's not the only tool that works like that out there. So yeah, just go back through your messages and see how many times you friended yourself. I know everybody in the studio here is probably doing that right now. Suzanne, how many times did you friend yourself? Probably none, because you're up in Utah, right?
I don't think so. How do we friend ourselves? I was doing something else. I'm sorry.
You just go back and look through your Facebook Messenger, and it'll tell you every time you have a friend who you've just friended.
What's creepy, yeah, is this whole thing that I've been getting so many friend requests, and I think everybody else has, from these accounts that seem, they might seem normal. And if I agree to take them, if I have mutual friends, immediately you get a message, hello, Suzanne, or whatever your name is, hello, or something like that. And it always strikes me that if you ignore them, and then it's always the same thing, how are you today? And it just seems to me like these are actually bots. So I get stuff like that. and I block the accounts immediately. But every day I get several accounts where or requests where I block them because it's obvious that they're fake. So I Facebook brags on my news feed by sending me messages on there. They want me to have a safe and happy experience when I'm not in my 30-day, bans, but
Right.
they allow all these things to come through. And I think what I'd prefer is to swim with the sharks like we do, rather than have Facebook censor and try and make my experience happy and safe. It's just
I don't want them. I don't want them making me happy and safe, because I see what they do to everybody else.
right.
I enjoy. I mean, you get the messages. Hello, Suzanne. My name is Inigo Montoya. You hacked my messenger. Prepare to die.
Yeah.
These
They're
ones-
telling you, say hi to your new friend so-and-so. I'm a big girl. If I want to say hi, I'll say hi, for crying out loud.
What about these accounts that you keep getting? I get them all the time. They have no history, no mutual friends, and all out of nowhere, I'm getting requests from these people that are just all of a sudden they just poof appear.
Yeah, I get all the widowed veterans, and then I'll have somebody will have a mutual friend. It'll always be some guy that I barely know, and then his friends are all these scantily clad young ladies, and they have a link. They have these fake accounts for a reason, and people seem to buy into them. But I just don't understand the purpose of it. They can already spy on us anyway. Why it's necessary to get on somebody's friends list? But you would understand that better than I would.
Yeah, getting on the friends list is something that allows, other than nation states, it allows criminal activities and folks of that level of expertise to get access more readily, more easily, and more permanently. So if you don't have somebody who's a high-speed hacker, then you have to rely on some of the other tools that are out there. Some of the things I mentioned before will give you access. So these are not necessarily script kiddies, but they're people that have some skill, but are not full-blown hackers who are criminals. And they're looking for an easy way, so they don't have to go back and research and really learn how to code and really learn how to do things that'll allow them to hack by not wasting their time with that type of stuff. But on the other hand, it's really easy just to blow out, a million friend requests a day and just have the bot do it for you.
What's a way to tell the difference between the two of them, the different accounts?
So that's a good question. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a thing right now. I should be going over to Asia in the next month or so to go address a UN sanctioned event for cops and for counterintelligence people to do just that. It's there's a long answer and a short answer. The long answer will take us into your show, and the short answer can be done in about 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm gonna stick with the short answer on this one. When you look to the history, you really have to do some investigative work on people. And what I like to do is take the person, if they do have history, I'll go back and I'll check with highschools.com and see if they're there. See if that person shows up in that high school picture when they say that they graduated from a certain high school. I'll check with, I have a couple services that I use where I check and look at their record of where they lived. If they say they live in a certain place, I'll go back and I'll look and I'll match up. I'll identify their email addresses, their contact information, things like that, and then correlate that with a LinkedIn account or some other social media platform that they have, because people usually have more than one. So it's really a lot of homework on your part. Don't just go and accept a friend request from someone because they have less clothes on than the last person who sent you a friend request. That's usually a bad way of choosing your friends. I would say be very cautious and be very careful about who you accept friend requests from. Get yourself some type of what is it called? Like a telephone lookup, a reverse lookup of telephone numbers and email addresses. Get yourself one of those services. It's worth it. I mean, we use stuff like that for the business that we do here, obviously, to get ground truth on who people are sometimes. Check with court records. They're public. See if the person did a land deal. Figure out how to go and look up land records. Go look up all of the what's the legal word for it when you have people having strife with each other in the public record? All those things that are adjudicated in a court. You can go find all that stuff, and that's the easiest way. Spend a little time. You'll have some fun too. You'll learn a lot more about your community. You'll learn a lot more about how things work in your community, pretty much, who the people are. You'll start to see names that repeat over and over again on all these different documents, and you'll find out that out of all the possible people that work in one building somewhere, there's like 4 or 5 people that do 90% of the signing off on everything that's in there. And those are the people you want to find out more about, because they're approving or denying things based on their personality. So if you ever need that in the future, hey, you could use that, socially engineer them. Hey, how's it going? I've been reading about you. You have? Oh, sure. Yeah, you're a big popular guy. Oh, thanks a lot, And then maybe they'll sign off on your stuff too. But the bottom line is just research. That's what you really have to do. Don't take anybody for face value on any social media platform. I guarantee you, especially if they don't have a picture of themselves, run away. Just be very, very cautious. If they don't have a picture of themselves up there, if for some reason they're not going to show their face, I would be very, very cautious. But that's the short answer on how you do it, Suzanne. Did that answer your question, Madame? And she's gone. She's here and gone. Okay. Well, I had one other thing I wanted to talk about, and that is the trustworthiness of apps that you can get out of the App Store and Google Play Store. And I want you to know that the App Store is just a little better than Google Play. And when I say that, I mean that 72% of the apps that you see have malware embedded in them. 72%. In the App Store, it's 70%. So almost everything that you see, at least 70% of the apps that you could put on your phone, on your pad, whatever, has malware embedded inside of it. The other day I mentioned that, we fired up Windows 95 and we plugged in the current antivirus program against it, and it had 286 embedded viruses written into the code. These weren't things that were missed. These were things that were written in.
Hey, Greg, can you stay after on my show? I want to talk about this and a couple other related things with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I am. As long as I can get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, you have time for that.
Okay. So the same thing with the apps here. The apps have all of these viruses written into them, and they're written in not just for short access, not just for midterm access, but they're written in to make changes to the firmware that's on the hard drive. It's going to stay there forever. So I hear John Philip Sousa coming on in the background. That means, Greg, be quiet, shut up, and get ready for a new edition of the Wasatch Report with Suzanne Sherman. And I guess we'll be back in just a few minutes here. For everybody out there, God bless you all. And, try to stay secure and keep your fingers crossed.
Wasatch Report, shooting straight on everything from prepping to politics.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wasatch Report. I am Suzanne Sherman. I will be your host for the next hour. Joining me in our cyber studio is Greg Junkbond Carpenter, Daniel Bailey. Daniel Bailey, host of the Bailey Report. Don't distract me, Greg. You're supposed to be getting your coffee right now. And Jeff Johnson, our producer and the other co-founder of the network. Want to thank you for joining us today, January 31st, year of our Lord 2019. Reminding you, follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus, CERBERUS. Radio Network, our fan page, CRN. We have a SoundCloud page. All of the shows that we do, including the one we just hosted with Greg Carpenter, The Spy Who Loves Liberty, will be up on SoundCloud. Also, we have Daniel Bailey, also, some shows up there as well. Jeff Johnson, The Paradigm Shift. I think we'll be getting him to record some new ones soon. And Fundamentals of Federalism, where Jeff and I record audio versions of some of the articles that I have published. We have a few of them out. I know we're going to get one out again soon. That article was
Did we lose? We lost you, Suzanne. Oh no, that's not good.
She's out there in the Netherlands, or the Hither. I think it's called the Hitherlands or something like that.
I don't know
where you can't find it.
What's happened?
Suzanne,
Hinterlands.
the hinterlands. That's it. Thank you. You know what? Every once in a while,
I'm wondering.
Smack on the head.
I wonder if she saw an elk out her window and she had to go shoot that last cow elk of the season.
Oh, that's right. She still has a tag left, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does.
Oh my
So
God.
I'm not sure, folks. I'm not quite sure of what just happened. Maybe Greg hacked her because he wanted another hour. I'm not quite sure.
I wouldn't put it past that son of a gun. You got to keep your eye on that secret squirrel guy.
I'll tell you what, Greg, can you just keep going until she comes back on? I'm going to text her and I'm going to let her know that she's gone and that she might just need she might need to leave and come back in. Oh, there she went. So she's going to come back in and then hopefully she's back.
There she is. We see that pretty picture.
We see the picture.
Can you not hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
Now we hear you.
You go, girl.
Did my whole intro not come through?
Yes, you were gone.
Oh, that's weird because my mic was not even muted. Well, you know what? Everybody knows who we are. This is the Wasatch Report. It is January 31st, 2019. Jeff Johnson joining me in the studio today. I don't know what happened to our first intro, but want to remind you to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. We're on YouTube. We have a chat going on in there. I hope we have people showing up today. And Jeff will share your commentary with me. Hit me up on Facebook, personal messenger. No perverts, please, but I will repeat your commentary. You can join in the discussion. That's our way of getting audience participation for the English speakers until we get our phone issues worked out. So how are our levels? Everything all working now, Jeff?
Oh, everything's fine once you came back.
That's weird because my mic wasn't even muted. Very, very strange. Quick story I saw on Fox right now. The polar vortex. Holy cow. Apparently we have 8 people that have perished so far. We have a college student, Indiana police
supposed to be
officer.
about 20 degrees warmer today,
And
but
let
it's
me
not.
mute. Those are really annoying. And dying from the winter, record-breaking deep freeze. And so, folks, stay safe out there. Bring your pets in. We talk about cold weather preparedness all the time. And it's just, Daniel, you guys, I'm glad that you haven't had to have runs in this weather, but the truckers especially, stay safe out there. A little bit of news quickly out of Utah. I like to follow the Libertas Institute. Connor Boyack out here is one of those that is really pushing to protect our rights out here. He was the moving force also behind Proposition 2. I have some disagreements with him on that one, but I always turn to Libertas Institute to see what the upcoming legislation is right now. And not surprising, we have our own version of the extreme risk protection orders coming our way, also known as the red flag laws. HB 209 calls for the removal of firearms for alleged risk to self or others. Now, we also know DC is considering a national version of this, and President Trump, who, when he was candidate, Trump said he respected the Second Amendment. We need to just respect the unconstitutional gun laws we already have. So we'll look forward to see what happens out there. But out here in Utah, HB 209 is sponsored by Representative Steve Handy. He aims to add Utah to the list of a few states that have red flag firearms laws. Similar laws elsewhere. HB 209 would create a process by which a family member or roommate of a firearm owner or a police officer could petition a court to order the removal of that person's firearms and ammunition. This would be done through an ex parte order, meaning the firearm owner can't even defend himself or herself against the judge's order. What did President Trump say? First, we'll get the guns, and then we'll worry about due process. Let me remind you, recently, one of the co-owners of Utah Gun Exchange was arrested. He was charged with drug possession, firearms possession, illegal firearms possession, numerous other offenses, and civil asset forfeiture for the tune of thousands of dollars. The guy was a prepper. He had gold bars. All the stuff that preppers have is considered to be subject to civil asset forfeiture if you can't justify how you obtained it, apparently. Here's my problem with this. In that case, the warrant for his arrest, and I discussed this on another show, was predicated on an anonymous tip. Now, to me, anonymous tip, absent further investigation, really does not meet the standard of the indicia of reliability that is required in the warrant requirement. And again, the Utah Constitution is, from what I remember reading, similar to that of the Fourth Amendment protection of our privacy. So that's something to consider. So if you can be turned in by your roommate, how many of us have had roommates in college who we couldn't stand, had very contentious roommates, and you pack up, you move out. Any one of these people could report you. And based on something like that, they can go to a court and take your firearms away. The troubling aspect of this bill, according to Libertas, is its deprivation of due process, making it difficult for those accused of being at risk to prove that they aren't. So here what we have in the interests of public safety, apparently, that the burden shifts to the accused. And what's even worse is the accused doesn't even get their day in court until after the fact. And then how much money is it going to cost you? And how many lives have been saved from these protection orders? I know so far in Maryland, one person has died as a result of the police storming his house to collect his guns. But we don't hear the gun control advocates saying, well, if we could just save one life of those that have been accused of not even violating a law, they only care about saving lives when it comes to perpetuating more, continuing more gun.
So,
yeah,
basically, what the gun control advocates are saying is, if we could just kill one more gun owner, the world would be a safer place.
That's exactly what they want to do. Failure to surrender the weapons to the police officer serving the warrant then becomes the basis for a search warrant for the officers to forcibly enter and remove the weapons. To me, that's almost like refusing to answer questions. Well, what have you got to hide? Remember, a few weeks ago, I talked about the roadblock on Interstate 70. And police officers put up a sign saying that there was going to be a stop and search for drugs up ahead. The sign was misleading. There was no stop and checkpoint up ahead. What they did do was notice that any car making an illegal U-turn in anticipation of such stop and check that behavior would turn into probable cause. They would turn the person over. Typically, when you're pulled over for an infraction of the vehicle code, that's pretty much a stop and release. They issue a citation and on your merry way. But because they put that sign up there, they say that's probable cause to search for drugs. Out come the canine, and you may or may not go off to jail. So here, going back to this article, the overreaction, this is an overreaction to a mass shooting in another state. And it aims to set up a highly regulated system in which an individual's right to keep and bear arms can be undermined through an ex parte order, violating the presumption of innocence that persons should maintain in order to have their rights preserved. Further, firearms should not be targeted in the absence of a broader approach to regulating dangerous weapons. I'm very disappointed. I hope that this does not pass. So far, Utah has been a very firearms friendly place to live, and I hope it stays that way. It was really the reason I moved here. Right now, it is a shall issue state. I do not see that changing, but it is also an open carry state where you can carry your firearm without a concealed carry permit. The only difference is if you open carry without a concealed carry permit, you may not have a round in the chamber if you have a semi-automatic, or you must be 2 actions away if you carry a revolver from firing. So, there is that. And I'm okay one way or the other with that. I'm glad that we can open carry. And I seriously hope that they're not going to take that away. But I really see that happening in the near future. And I hope it doesn't. In fact, when I first moved here, Governor Herbert signed into law a bill that said that you cannot be harassed for having a firearm open carry in the holster, absent other behavior that people might find threatening. Because I'll tell you what, I have been reported 2 times that I know of for open carrying. I'm not going to get into the debate of whether or not tactically it's a good thing to do. You can go backwards and forwards. I refuse to get a concealed carry permit. I will not go through that process. That being said, they will lock you up if they catch you with one concealed and you don't have permission from the Crown. So the way I can defend myself best and avoid going to jail is to open carry. I had a SO that I was talking to that I knew out here in the neighborhood, and I told him about one time we were out in Park City and we were having lunch outside, and there were about 6 SOs out there all having lunch as well. And I said, in California, you guys would have thrown me to the ground and arrested me. And you know what he said? Somebody actually came up to him when he was having lunch and pointed at me and said, "Aren't you going to do something about that?" And he told me, he just laughed and said, "It's legal out here." Another time, I was shopping in a store, and my son told me, I'm walking by this lady. He called me. He was in another part of the store. And he said, I'm listening to a woman on her cell phone, and she's talking about a woman with a gun in a store, and she's giving it your description. Well, nobody came to arrest me. They probably told her that I can actually walk around freely with a firearm. Again, it's holstered. I'm minding my own business, but these people can't stand that. I was in Walmart one time, and a woman yells across the room, "Oh my God, is that a gun?" And we happened to be at the sporting desk. We were getting our hunting licenses, so everybody there had a good laugh and made fun of her. But make no mistake, we laugh about it right now, but these are the people that are influencing the politicians that want to strip our rights away. So be aware. I think in the long term, they're probably going to win, and that's going to be a line drawn in the sand. An example of people really not understanding how we can fight these scenarios, how we can fight these laws, is understand, for instances, when we come to federal issues. I had an article that I posted, 10th Amendment Center published it recently, about firearm owners and how they will lose their right to have a gun if they use medical marijuana. And actually, there was a show I did with Alan Mosley, my friend, over at the Gold Standard, and we got into the details. Unfortunately, people don't understand what really the laws are, and there also seems to be a bias against many of the conservatives who own firearms, who are very quick to say, "Yeah, well, if you smoke weed, you shouldn't have guns in the first place, medicinal marijuana or not." And here is an article out of concealedcarry.com, and it says marijuana, concealed carry, and firearm ownership. So people are picking up on the warnings that, you know, if you have a firearm and you're getting medical marijuana, the government's going to want to take your firearms away from you. They're not giving you practical solutions. So they're mentioning the FFL and the ATF form 4473, which asks you if you're using unlawful drugs. And then there's the admonition in bold letters that, yes, if you are using marijuana, even if it's legal in your state, you still may not have a firearm. So here we have this egregious overreach by the federal government. First of all, they're not allowed, according to the Constitution, as ratified, to regulate arms at all. We've thrown that by the wayside. Nobody seems to care anymore. So now what they're saying also is there is no authority to regulate marijuana. My article in 10th Amendment Center, Parchment and Plants, what the Prohibition era can teach us about the war on drugs. So again, we have zero constitutional authority for the federal government to regulate either one of these, but yes, they do. So this article says, don't my state rights matter when I buy or carry a gun in my state? And again, we see this deferral here to federal regulation, and they pretty much tell you there's nothing you can do about it. Since legal marijuana is new, could this possibly blow over? Well, they cite the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Concealed carry licenses are managed and issued by the states' rights. And that's exactly what Connor had said. This won't affect your ability to get a concealed carry permit. The problem is all of these are processed through the DOJ. And guess what? They're going to know about this. They also ask about reciprocity. Again, we know national reciprocity would be a horrible idea. And here's the crux of the issue here. Right here is my problem with the gun enthusiasts that just simply don't understand federalism. They ask the question, so what do we recommend? Regardless of your opinion on the medicinal or recreational use of marijuana, there is a real issue that needs to be addressed and clarified. Right now, it is as clear as mud, and people may unknowingly be sacrificing their constitutional rights. God, I hate that term, in order to get high or use medical marijuana. Note that little undertone there of a judgment. I bet the person probably had a beer when they finished this article. When they finished writing this article. There are undoubtedly people who are chronically ill who could benefit from medically prescribed marijuana. However, for all the other 18 to 25-year-olds who have joined the craze to get a medical marijuana recommendation from a doctor for their carpal tunnel syndrome, again, judge much, as a result of playing video games, or to help them sleep, I suggest you weigh the options and look for potential unintended consequences of getting that recommendation or state-issued medical marijuana licenses. So sadly, they really do freedom a tremendous disservice when they say, in other words, just roll over and capitulate to the federal overlords. We like to provide other solutions here. So again, I think we'll post that article that the states need to step up and protect their lawful gun owners from these draconian laws. Anybody want to, Jeff saying, Ed said in chat, Suzanne, it's just like the IRS. Yes, guilty until proven innocent. That is exactly the case. And you know what, Greg, that brings up a topic, and I wanted to have you in here as well. I think I sent you a link about the IRS. Let me see if I can find it here. And this is big data meets big government with spy software. And yes, this is from World News Daily or WorldNet Daily, WND. I know some people don't like it, but this really resonated with me. One of the reasons people identity theft is considered by the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration to be a crime of the century is because of the IRS. The IRS makes growing demands for information about people's business and private lives every day. Notice even our medical records now can be reviewed by them. What did the ACA require? That they all be kept electronically. We know that the government and Google are joined at the hip. There's no privacy for us. Again, this goes to the discussion I had the other day about there being no reasonable expectation of privacy in the modern world right now. And so how can we expect what we say to our doctor, which used to be considered confidential and couldn't be compelled absent some sort of a warrant? We have, or even in court, it could be considered not admissible for purposes of evidence, but I don't want to digress too far on that road. We really don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy, and that once was the gold standard for determining whether or not government intrusion into our private lives is acceptable. Greg, do you have this article? Do you want to run with this a little bit?
Yeah, I looked through the article you gave me, but I have a quote I'd like to throw out first, if I could.
Sure.
It's the mentality that we live with today, and it's really shaped us, I'd like to say. I'm just going to read it to you, and then I'm going to give you the background on it because I think it's that important. This quote, we have heard enough about states and states' rights lately, said Thomas. Let us mix them up and nationalize them a little. Upon completing the Battle of Chattanooga during the Civil War, General George Thomas, who was noted as the Rock of Chickamauga, one of the famous Union generals, he said that, and it really put into perspective for me a long time ago that we really lost our sense of who we were and who really we needed to be accountable to. Because now we're accountable to an organization that really is legally authorized to spy on us and do whatever it is they want to do. Let me put it that way. And can have you thrown in jail at a whim. And that's how fast, I mean, you think you got it rough out there, folks? You go ahead and you hold back 1 penny, 5 cents, 10 cents from the IRS. And if you do it willfully, you're going to jail. I don't care how small that amount is. Just like my dad told me a long time ago, he was a postal worker, became an assistant postmaster over the years and stuff. He said, if one of the clerks at the window takes 1 penny out of the drawer, that person is accountable through the postal inspector service, and they will have their whole life turned upside down, going back and having the IRS go through all of their tax returns, not just the last 3 years like you hear about. They'll go back through everything that they have records for. And if you don't have records that go back to whatever they want to look at, you lose.
And I am a horrible record keeper. And here's the thing, sometimes you overpay, but when you get your money back, do you get interest and penalties? Or if they make a mistake, do you get interest and penalties? No, you really don't. You have to look at the draconian nature of these federal agencies and what happened when it was actually weaponized against the enemies of the Obama administration. We had Lois Lerner, who we knew under her supervision, the IRS was being used as a weapon to delay the approval of 501c3 organizations. And they knew that this was going on. And when it came time for her to testify, all she had to do was take the fifth. Till this day, I don't think any punitive action has been taken against her.
No, I don't think anything's happened with her either, to be honest. And I don't think anything's going to happen. I uncovered a purchase order from 2013 from the IRS and they were looking to buy remote surveillance systems with, quote, built-in DVD burner and 2 internal HDD cameras, covert coffee trays with camera concealment. And it's just a laundry list of stuff here that they're that they're purchasing. And you think about this: color IP camera concealment with single channel network server, support dual video stream, PO, web viewer, and CMS software included audio. And what's else? Concealed clock radios. This is ridiculous. This is the accounting service that checks how much money is coming in and working on taxes, and they're purchasing stuff that you would have to get through one of the spy agencies. Now, if that's not out of control, I don't know. I really don't know what to tell you.
I forgot who the individual was, but it was a representative of the IRS when they were talking about, there was some actual talk about scaling it back a little bit. And the response was the IRS is the only government agency where they actually, you give them money and they actually give you money back. How insane is this? And there's a question this article refers to at the very end. How do you manage, process, and assimilate such massive amount of data to the point where it becomes usable? And the 2018 to 22 strategic plan expresses the goal to invest, meaning us jackasses are going to pay for this, invest in analytics and visualization software and tools, and develop processes to support analytics and IRS operations. The end game is presented in these words: advancement in how data is collected, stored, accessed, and analyzed will allow us to deploy data better. Well, yay. We'll standardize our data processes and protocols and encourage collaboration among all IRS business units. Increased interoperability of data systems and sources will enhance, they always have the words, enhance, and secure the seamless flow of data to enable greater authorized access to information. Will invest in training to develop more advanced analytic skills set across the IRS and use the data to improve our business processes. Improve our processes.
Suzanne.
Yes. Hi, Jeff.
I have an article here. The IRS had 4,487 guns and 5,062,000 rounds. So I'm sure that they're just running a little short to be able to kill every citizen at this point.
A lot of deer hunters in the IRS, apparently. But we see this all the time. The government agencies are, even the postal inspector. I have a friend that actually works in the main one, and I'm going to keep the name of the state out there, but he's high up in that department. And the postal inspector there, he told me how many tens of thousands of rounds he had in his office there. And this wasn't his own personal stash. This was government owned ammunition in the tens of thousands in that one office alone. My friend said that they were set up for that outfit to become a FEMA camp if that ever happened. Obviously, I can't confirm something like that, but please explain to me why so many rounds would be required in such an incident. Well, I don't really know.
I'd like to enlighten you to the next part of this article here. I'm trying to bring it right back up again because I have so many doggone pop-up messages on this thing. It's driving me crazy. I can't even read this thing. I don't know. I can't stand. Hold on.
No
Greg
problem.
is switching over to the browser of choice, which is Brave because it blocks everything.
You have to have a Mac.
But I wanted to.
Or can anybody use Brave?
What's that?
Do you have to have a Mac to use Brave?
No. It'll deploy. It deploys on. It works just fine with Linux too, by the way.
Okay.
Which we were just talking about on the last show. If you listen to The Spy Who Loved Liberty,
I did.
You'll know that Linux is a great operating system to operate with. Let me tell you, darling, you're going to love it.
want to talk a little bit about an article in the American Conservative. I've been meaning to get to this with the new Attorney General. I don't know if he's been sworn in yet, but William Barr. I want to get into that and his ignored participation and links to Ruby Ridge when we're done with this. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be okay. So here, let me get back down here to the article. Where am I at? Okay. The IRS is awash with data. The strategic plan boasts that the IRS volume of data was 100 times larger in 2017 than it was just 10 years prior. In 2018, the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit alone collected 1.67 terabytes of data from various sources. A terabyte is 1,099,511,627,776 bytes, or 1,024 gigabytes of data. Now, I have a couple of my external storage devices, and I have a server here, and I could store probably about, I look around, probably about 60 terabytes of data here. This is not a massive amount of data. This is making it sound like it's more than it is. You have 1,024 gigabytes of data anymore these days. You're not like stopping the computer from processing anything. All right. This is just ridiculous, and it's an excuse. And the big part of this is in the next paragraph where it says big government meet big data. On September 27, 2018, the IRS entered into a contract with Palantir Technologies of Palo Alto, California. Jeff Johnson, please do me a favor. Look up and you tell me who Palantir Technologies of Palo Alto, California is and what their claim to fame is, because I know. And I want to hear the shock and awe in your voice when you crank this out. And I chose Jeff specifically for the dramatic value that he's going to offer to this.
Well, hold on. I'm still looking. Palantir.
Palantir. Palantir.
Okay.
That's right.
Let's see. Oh,
if you can't find it, I'll reset it all from memory.
It's going to take me a while to read this.
Go ahead, Greg. Just fire away. I'm
going to. Palantir Technologies of Palo Alto, California is the largest provider to the U.S. intelligence community for big data analysis. They offer a platform for the intelligence community to collect all their data and analyze it in looking for targets around the world. Palantir is owned by a congressman.
Oh, geez.
Okay,
what more?
Here's from their website.
Can we please have a collapse today? Can we just please have everything just...
It says back-end infrastructure for integrating, managing, and securing data of any kind from any source at massive scale. That's right from their website.
Boy, back end is right, huh?
They're going to back end you. So that's what Palantir does. There was a big discussion in the Defense Department, specifically for intelligence community data analysis collection and structuring.
You know,
we
lowly rank and file attorneys, when we're in law school and have to study ethics, are told that we must avoid even the appearance of an impropriety or a conflict of influence of interest. Why do we not see that same admonition against our government officials. And this goes right into, we were talking about the Senate confirmation hearings that we're going to get into momentarily with William Barr as the Attorney General, when Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings were going on. We were so distracted by the dog and pony show of all these fake witnesses who lied to Congress, who, by the way, unlike Roger Stone, have not been subject, or Hillary Clinton, have not been subject to arrest by a SWAT team with the full coverage of CNN. We've been distracted to the point of ignoring, again, after this whole third party doctrine, what the real questions should have been surrounding the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. And that was his stance on our fundamental right to privacy as guaranteed by restricting the government from violating it, the federal government, and the Fourth Amendment. The problem is everybody lost this point in the political theater surrounding his confirmation. The article that the 10th Amendment Center published here is butchering the Fourth Amendment. The Constitution delegates the power to appoint justices to the Supreme Court, and we know that they have to be confirmed by the Senate. So here we have the dog and pony show in Washington, D.C. This whole progress was an absolute debacle. But here, what was never really focused on was his fact that he felt that the gathering of metadata, and Greg, you helped me with this article, declared it was entirely consistent with the Fourth Amendment. He says the government's collection of telephony metadata from a third party, such as telecommunications service provider, is not considered a search under the Fourth Amendment, at least under, again, they love to cite their own judicial temple monkeys' opinions, the Supreme Court's decision in Smith versus Maryland. That precedent remains binding on lower courts in our hierarchical system of absolute vertical stare decisis, meaning judicial tyranny. He based his opinion on the so-called third-party doctrine. In simple terms, the legal precedent assumes that when you give information to a third party, such as a bank or internet service provider, you forfeit any right to privacy. And what we've said before, try to communicate or conduct business absent internet service providers, aka third parties. It can't be done. Therefore, we are assumed to have voluntarily surrendered any right to privacy vis-a-vis our medical discussions with our doctors. We know that information is stored electronically. Our banking, our business dealings, with our where are we not subject to the third party doctrine, other than if we go off into a corner and maybe whisper to each other, but you better not have your cell phone with you when you do so. So again, Kavanaugh based his opinion on the third party doctrine, and this was completely ignored. Everybody was so intent on keeping the liberals upset and seeing all the crying and focusing on the fact that we were defeating the Me Too movement. They didn't understand that we were really defeating the Us Too movement, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, in effect against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, this ties all in. I know I seem like I go all over the place, but think about now the arrest of Utah Gun Exchange owner out here recently. We just had an anonymous tip. Coincidentally, the gentleman is involved in a contentious lawsuit right now with some people he was having business dealings with. So that in and of itself should have warranted that they would, no pun intended, what they would dig a little bit deeper. So we really need to focus on how important these rights are. Did you have anything you wanted to continue expound upon about that before we get into the issue with William Barr?
Yeah, I just want one more thing I'd like to say is, in case anybody is not aware, that the IRS has been working with Palantir since the original $99 million contract was signed back in 2013. So they've been working with the intelligence community, software developer, big data analysis organization run by a congressman for at least 5 or 6 years, already analyzing you and collecting all your information and putting it into the IRS database without any probable cause either.
Also speaking of conflict of interest, there's a movie coming out about Dick Cheney in the theaters very soon. And do you think it's reasonable, or do you think it's a liberal talking point that perhaps there was a conflict of interest between Dick Cheney's business interests and his political goals?
Oh, never.
No.
There was never a question that he crossed over.
Okay. Our good friend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, because of the amount of crossover that he had. And it wasn't just him with his companies. His initial, or his high visibility company, I guess, of Halliburton. There were several other companies that he worked with that received huge government grants or won huge government contracts over the years. And the same with the Bushes. There's nothing that should have surprised us there at all with them. I mean, considering that Prescott Bush was one of the people that was involved with the plot to overthrow FDR back in the 30s. I'm not surprised at anything anymore. When people have an aspiration for power, they're going to do whatever they want, whatever they can, in order to get it and to get rich. So it doesn't surprise me.
No, not at all. Again, there are laws for them and laws for us. Our good friend James Bovard, he writes for The Hill. This is an article that came out from the American Conservative. And this is about William Barr's connection to Ruby Ridge, defending FBI snipers. Now, I listened to as much of his confirmation hearings as I could absolutely stand. Interestingly, Dianne Feinstein is looking forward to working with him. That alone should be... And we'll get into his take on marijuana and that sort. It seems like he's walking back a little bit of Jeff Sessions' mission a little. I don't like this guy. This is an article James Bovard wrote. The Senate Judiciary hearings for nominee William Barr focused heavily on his views on special counsel Robert Mueller, but nobody is asking about his legal crusade for blanket immunity for federal agents who killed American citizens. Now, one of the things I heard during the confirmation hearing was Senator Lindsey Graham putting his hands in the air when he was talking to somebody who was opposing Barr, saying, "This is the best the Republicans can come up with. If you don't like him, I don't know what to tell you," which is really a referendum on how hosed we all are, if that's what Lindsey Graham thinks. Barr received routine questions. Again, these are all softball questions from the Judiciary Committee asking him to disclose his past work, including pro bono activities serving the disadvantaged. The disadvantaged, and thank you, Jim Barr, for being the adult in the room and bringing up what really mattered on these hearings that was ignored. The disadvantaged that he spent most time helping was an FBI agent who slayed an Idaho mother holding her baby in 1992. Barr spent 2 weeks organizing former attorneys generals and others to support FBI sniper in defending against criminal charges in connection with the Ruby Ridge incident. What a true humanitarian he is. What a great guy. I can't wait for him to be our top lawyer. Barr also assisted in framing legal arguments advanced in the district court in the subsequent appeal to the Ninth Circuit. He told the committee the charitable work, by the way, the FBI agent already had federally paid law firm defending him. Federally paid means us jackass taxpayers are the ones funding the guy to keep ourselves in chains. Helped tamp down one of the biggest scandals during Barr's time as AG from 91 to 93. Why are we recycling these Bush degenerates? That's my commentary, not his. Barr was responsible for both the U.S. Marshal Service and the FBI, two federal agencies whose misconduct at Ruby Ridge helped weaken the bond of trust that must exist between ordinary Americans and our law enforcement agencies. Do you know anybody that has a bond of trust at this point with the FBI or the DOJ or the CIA, the NSA? No.
No, I can't. You know, this guy is a piece of work, Barr. And don't forget, Mueller worked for Barr back in the Bush administration too. These guys are all buddies. There's no one that we haven't we haven't seen before. Mueller was the assistant attorney general for the criminal division during the Bush administration and worked for Barr. So now it comes really full circle that we have a collection of people that we're seeing over and over again who have done some of the worst things that we could think about. You know, and it's not just Ruby Ridge, where what was her name? Weaver, right? Mrs. Weaver?
Yeah.
Yeah, Weaver. It's not just Ruby Ridge. You know, he was at the helm there when they took out Waco too, the Branch Davidians. I mean, he has no concern for human life, for our rights. I'm
Our top attorney general should be in Leavenworth for the rest of his life. And here we are with senators giving him high praise and accolades. Randy Weaver was living on a mountaintop in northern Idaho. He was entrapped by an undercover federal agent. Remember, he was tricked into, I think, taking an extra quarter inch off of a shotgun. He had initially refused. Yeah, and again, we have another political prisoner who was just released out here in Utah. I've talked about him before, and this is a guy named Bill Keebler. He used to teach homesteading and survival classes, wilderness survival, out in an area, Stockton, Utah, and I actually went to one of his rallies. He had Sheriff Mack from Constitutional Sheriffs Association. He's the head of that organization. Two of Lavoy Finicum's daughters, Michelle Fiore. I have some other opinions about her, but she was out there and she actually gave a great talk on jury nullification. Well, apparently, Bill Keebler came across the ire of the federal agents, and he was arrested for trying to allegedly setting off a pipe bomb outside of a BLM office in Salt Lake City. Who was the guy that brought him into this trap? A confidential informant with the FBI. He eventually got a deal that he had to take. They had this guy's feet to the fire. He was in horrible health. His health deteriorated while in their custody to the point where he was in a wheelchair. And his deal was, you get 10 minutes to decide. You can either plea and this will end very well for you, or you're going to go to a federal prison and we will not be able to accommodate your medical needs. He took the deal and he went out, but he was a political prisoner. So he never got his day in court. Had he gotten his day in court, he likely would have been successful, as were the Bundys when this got before a court of law. Anyway, going back to Randy Weaver, he was entrapped by an undercover federal agent, just like Bill Keebler. U.S. Marshals trespassed on his land, killed his 14-year-old son. The following day, FBI sniper Lon Horiuchi killed his wife, Vicky, as she was standing in the cabin doorway. She was armed with a .50 caliber rifle aimed at Horiuchi. No, I'm just kidding. She was actually holding her newborn baby. All right? A jury found Weaver not guilty on all the charges. An Idaho jury, federal judge Edward Lodge slammed the Justice Department and the FBI for concealing evidence, just like they did at Bundy Ranch, by the way, and showing a callous disregard for the rights of the defendant and interests of justice, just like they did when they executed Lavoy Finicum. A Justice Department internal investigation compiled a 542-page report detailing federal misconduct and cover-ups in the case and suggested criminal charges against FBI officials involved in Ruby Ridge. Barr told the Times, in the New York Times in '93, that he was not directly involved in Ruby Ridge. 2 years later,
pardon me.
What does directly involved mean?
That means he had to have achieved to be directly involved. You must have had at least 500 phone calls with the Justice Department directly, with the people on the ground, in order to be considered directly involved. Less than 500 phone calls in a 24-hour period would not suffice.
Well, let's hear what does suffice here is not directly involved. He told the Washington Post 2 years after that top officials of the Bush Justice Department had at least 20 phone contacts concerning Ruby Ridge in 24 hours before Vicki Weaver was shot, including 2 calls involving Barr.
Well, you see that there it is.
There it is. But
it doesn't meet the criteria for direct involvement.
1995, FBI Director Louis Freeh.
That's the guy I got into it with on the Twitter feed about him and his cover-up of GWA Flight 800.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we'll get to that in a moment, and the rest of the show is going to be on this topic. We're not going to get off of this.
No, that's fine. It's just Louis Freeh is really good at covering up
that as well. We're dedicating the rest of the show to the corruption of these clowns. So, Louis Freeh announced wrist slaps for the FBI officials involved, including his friend Larry Potts, who supervised the operation from HQ and who approved the shoot without provocation orders that contravened the Constitution of the United States, according to a Justice Department internal.
Wait, where does it say that I can't, if I'm a federal law enforcement officer, that I can't shoot you if I want to? Where does it say that in the Constitution?
No, it doesn't. So it's an implied power.
So exactly. Exactly. So don't worry about it.
Got this little Fifth Amendment thing, but in the interest of national security, when we have a shotgun shot, sawed off about 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch too short, and a woman holding an assault newborn, they got to take some action here. So when Attorney General Janet Reno, what a piece of work she was, later nominated Potts for Deputy Director of the FBI, I think we should just ban this band of thugs. That's all they are. They're just a higher up version of the TSA. What
was the legal authority for the FBI in the first place?
Well, accordingly, if they're going to solve the 3 crimes that the general government is empowered to punish, which is piracy on the high seas, counterfeiting, or treason, we probably need a staff of maybe 20 in the FBI. End of story. Maybe 10 in the DOJ. Top newspapers and members of Congress protested, but Barr told the New York Times that his friend Potts was deliberate and careful, and I adopted a great deal of confidence in his judgment. I can't think of enough good things to say about him. After a few months later, the FBI suspended Potts after suspected perjury regarding Ruby Ridge. Suspected perjury. I wonder if he was subject to the same arrest as Roger Stone. I bet not. Oh, Potts, there's answer to my question. Potts was not charged and retired 2 years later. So the jackasses are still paying for his.
With a full pension that we have to fund.
Yes. Bovine 30-06 right here. The Justice Department paid $3 million to settle. So now these guys screw up. Once again, the tax chattel, us, get to pay for this, the wrongful death lawsuit for the Weaver family. When the Boundary County, Idaho, filed criminal charges against Horiuchi, Barr sprang to action, seeking immunity for FBI snipers. He spearheaded the effort to sway the court to dismiss all charges because holding a sniper liable would, you're going to love this, severely undermine, if not cripple, the ability of future attorneys general to rely on such specialized units in moments of crisis, such as hostage taking and terrorist acts.
No.
BS straw man argument here. The FBI entices, gets this guy to cut off the shotgun a little bit too short. Tell me how this is a hostage taking or a terrorist act. You know who the hostage takers are? The terrorists are these rat bastards in the FBI.
Okay. In the chat, I'm sorry. In the chat, Ed said we get law enforcement from Article 8, and Daniel said it's the 14th Amendment. I think they're both right.
Oh, you guys, that just burns my bacon when you come up with the right answer like that. Let me tell you.
Oh, did somebody say bacon? Really quick, I'm going to
Um,
wrap up this article. Then I want to hear about your pal Free. When the Justice Department, the Department of Injustice, we should call it, won an initial appeals court victory in the case in 2000, federal judge Alex Kozinski warned in a dissent that of a new James Bond 007 standard for the use of deadly force against American citizens. The same court reversed the decision the following year. Kozinski, writing for the majority, declared a group of FBI agents formulated rules of engagement that permitted their colleagues to hide in the bushes and gun down men and women, child, baby, who pose no immediate threat. Such wartime rules are patently unconstitutional for a police action. Does William Barr still endorse these wartime rules and a 007 standard that absolve federal agents for questionable shootings of Americans? Does Barr consider illegal government killings to be an oxymoron? Best of all, can Barr explain to us his understanding of the phrase government under the law? Bravo, James Bovard, my favorite journalist. Go ahead, Greg. Let's hear about your buddy here, Free.
Man, that's an awesome article.
I know. I love Bovard. I just love him. He's been on our show before. We actually did a show about Waco. His research is impeccable. And I really respect this guy. Go ahead, Greg. Let's have your commentary on this. Jeff or Daniel, you're welcome too. We've got about 5 minutes to wrap up this show. Boy, the hour flew by.
Yeah, Louis Free. So he's a miraculous former director of the FBI who survived some of the worst scandals in the history of the FBI. And I had posted, or I was talking about my show. I did a 3-part show on TWA Flight 800 on another channel. And somebody had made a comment on Twitter or something. And out of nowhere comes Louis Free and says, "Oh, you're talking about are you saying that such and such guy," and I'm not going to mention his name because he's a very good person, a very good FBI guy. I worked with him several times. So you're saying that this guy started a cover-up? So, no, and I responded to Louis Free. I was like, "No, I didn't say he did the cover-up." And Louis Free didn't get it because I was telling him that he was the one doing the cover-up because that was congruent with all of the other cover-ups that he had been working on and managing through Ruby Ridge and everything else, and Waco and everything else that had happened during that time. There was Travelgate. There was the death of Vince Foster, all these things, and he had botched all of them, but he was considered one of the best FBI guys in the history of the FBI. So I had taken and I had directly interviewed FBI agents who were on the ground doing the investigation. A good one of my very good friends, Steve Bongart, retired FBI guy now. He said, most important thing you can do as a citizen is to carefully keep your government at arm's length.
Good luck.
And yeah, because he really believes and understands that there are issues with the truth and the veracity of the information that comes out of government. He knows it for sure. And it stemmed from his very first job as an FBI agent, where he was in charge of figuring out if it had been a rocket that took down TWA Flight 800. And he said, well, he said that I couldn't rule out that it wasn't. And most of the information that they had collected from the eyewitnesses said it looked like that something had come from the ground up to the plane and blew the plane apart, as opposed to the blow up in midair where nothing happened. You know, too many people saw the same thing.
Whose Mercedes jackknifed.
Yeah, that, you know, give me a break. So, you know, I had to go back and tell Louis Free that, you know, I talked to people that did the investigation, you know, guys that worked for you, and I have a lot of respect for the guy who ran the investigation there. And I know that he was told to shut up on several things that happened. So you can't tell me, that I'm full of something, and he tried to say, well, you're some conspiracy guy or something. I said, no, I have it taped. The interviews with these guys, I taped it. I have the audio. I'll play it back for you if you're that dense. But all of the cover up came from you, buddy.
Well, and there's an article. We got to wrap up the show because we're out of time. We're going to do a show tomorrow. I believe Jeff is free tomorrow. Greg, you're welcome to join us. I'm going to follow up. You mentioned Travelgate, and we're going to continue the story tomorrow. You mentioned Travelgate. How many of us can keep track of all of these scandals? I'll discuss an article from Lou Rockwell. The ruling elites love how easily we're distracted and turned against each other. We're going to discuss cultural Marxism and identity Stalinism tomorrow. On behalf of Greg Junk, Von Carpenter, Daniel Bailey, Jeff Johnson, I'm Suzanne Sherman. I want to thank you for joining us here on the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. Thanks for listening.